I'm Christoph, the managing director of Sunday. We are a hyper-casual games developer and publisher out of Hamburg, Germany. And this talk is actually based on a post that I did on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it got a lot of resonance actually. So I like spilled a little bit like emotionally that I don't like the current situation about how we look at metrics in hyper casual, and it got over 200 likes. So for such a very niche topic, I think that's quite a lot of resonance, and I thought, hey, this would be a great talk actually for the Hyper Games conference. And so now I'm able to present this to you, and I'm also happy to show you my view on hyper casual and how to look at games. So today we are going to deep dive into Hyper Casual University. It's going to get a little bit technical. There will be a little bit of math, a lot of formulas. It's not too complex. It's just like basic math that you did in maybe first years of high school, right? So everyone will be able to follow, I hope. And I will try to keep it simple. Of course, there is some simplification there. If there will be an ad network expert here in the talk, then this person might have some objections like, hey, this is maybe too simple. But we are talking about models here. We're trying to keep very conceptual. So let's get started. What is the situation that we're looking at in hyper casual, right? When you as a developer want to work with a publisher, the first thing that they usually want to tell you is, hey, please give us your prototype, we will test us, and if this has a good CPI, then we can continue with this, right? So we have usually this CPI gate in the beginning. That's the first step that you want to crack when you want to make a hit game, is getting a good CPI. And the CPI usually ranges from somewhere in this area of 15 cents to 40 cents, depends on the publisher, depends on the situation. Sometimes there's a competition attached to it, and for lower CPI, you get a higher price money and so on, right? And why this is the reason is pretty obvious. The cheaper the game is in marketing, the more user your publisher can get for you, the more players you can get, and the more money you can earn together, right? So pretty obvious. But the question is, like, this is the absolute like industry standard, but nobody really deeply understands often like what is going on there, right? So you just give this thing to someone else and this person tests it for you and you just trust in the result, but what is actually going on behind the scenes, right? So let's take a bit of a look. How is the CPI actually measured and how is the process? So we usually do CPI measurement on social networks. That means on Facebook or on TikTok, sometimes even on Snapchat, right? And it's pretty much the same process for all of the companies. And how Facebook works is exactly the same for everybody, right? So there are no tricks, no fancy workarounds. It's just like you create a campaign in Facebook and you upload your gameplay video, right? So you show whatever 15, 20 seconds of your gameplay, and then you upload it into the dashboard and you give it a budget. So you just tell Facebook, hey, I want to spend $100. This is my video creative. Give me all the installs that you can with this video, and you can spend all of my money, spend all of these $100 that I just gave you. And then what Facebook does, it goes around and it tries to find the best users who actually are willing to install your game, right? So how does it do that? It just shows video impressions to different people, right? And so this person doesn't really like it, this also not, but hey, this guy seems to be super interested, and hey, he actually might install your game. So this is an installer here, right? And so over time, Facebook tries to optimize the best users to show the ad to, and then this gives you the highest amount of installs in return, right? So let's say your campaign budget is spent, and then after a day, Facebook tells you, hey, okay, this is the result. I have my output from what you ordered me to do. So I showed this game to 500 different people. So you got 500 different impressions. You get so and so many installs. And super important, it gives you a certain number called CPM. What is the CPM? The CPM is the price that you have to pay for Facebook to show this video to different people, or to show 1,000 different impressions to different people. So CPM stands for cost per mil. That means the cost to show 1,000 video impressions to different people, right? And that is super critical, because you can imagine this a little bit like the stock market price of the video ads on the market, right? And this is then actually how you calculate your ad spend, right? So the ad spend is the price that you're paying for 1,000 impressions that Facebook just gives you. You don't have any influence over this, right? Facebook just tells you, hey, I showed this ad to 1,000 people. Now give me $60, right? That's how it works. And then you multiply this just by your impressions divided by 1,000 to make it even, right? So that is the money you spend on ads. And now you can calculate the CPI, and Facebook does this for you in the dashboard, right? So the CPI is actually the amount of money that you spend on ads divided by the installs, right? And that's the process. That's everything there is to this and everything that you need to know. Easy, right? And this is the process. It's been established since hyper-casual games looked like this. Everybody's doing it. We're doing it as well. It's fine. It's quick. And the good thing about this process is, it's like super easy to use, gives you super fast results. The only problem I'm seeing with it is that we are sometimes looking at the wrong metrics, or like not at all metrics that we should look at, right? And what is the problem, right? It's easy. Everybody's doing it. So what is the problem? The problem is exactly this here. What you're seeing here is the moving average of all our test campaigns that we did on Facebook over last year. And as you can see, this is a very squiggly line. It's not stable at all, right? So what does it mean? This is, like I mentioned, it's like a little bit like the stock market price for 1,000 ad impressions. So you see in the beginning of last year, we paid around $30 for 1,000 ad impressions. And then around Christmas time, it goes up to $80. And this is just, like I mentioned, the moving average. There are some extreme examples where it goes even higher and lower. So it fluctuates a lot, right? It's not stable at all. So it fluctuates with the day of the week. So CPM might be lower on Monday than on a Saturday, right? Then you have the seasonality effect that at the end of the year, it's going up. And this has something to do with basically how many other advertisers are there, right? So end of the year, it's usually the big shopping season. It's a big Christmas season where all the online shops want to make the biggest revenue of the year, and they push out a lot of advertising for Black Friday, for Christmas, right? And all of these holidays. So there's a lot of competition in the market, and everyone is trying to show their ads, and this drives the price up for the impressions. And also there's an effect that is increasing year over year, right? So it's like this whole curve is on a quite a good incline when you compare it to like how it was 3 years ago. It's like going up, because more and more companies are coming into the internet, are coming into digital advertising. So everything gets more expensive over time. It's some kind of inflation, basically, right? So this sucks, right? Because this is like the price that we are paying for the impressions, and is also then this influences our CPI. So like this curve is going up, also our CPI is going up. But the gates, like the CPI gates, haven't moved so much, right? That seems to be an issue. So why is this happening? Okay, little dive into economics. Maybe you had it in university. Otherwise, I will give you like a super quick overview of what's happening here. So you have the curves for demand and supply. So supply is all of the apps out there that can show ads, and demand are the companies that want to show their ads in these apps, right? So let's say it's Christmas time, right? And usually you have your equilibrium, it's your optimal quantity and your optimal price, and everything is stable, right? So it's like here, it doesn't move so much. And then suddenly everybody wants to advertise their products on Christmas. So the demand curve, the demand for ad impressions moves to the right. So everybody wants more quantity, and that also drives the price up, right? And this is just basic microeconomics. I don't want to go too much into detail with this, but basically this is the reason why this eCPM curve, it changes over time. It's super fluctuating, super dynamic, and most importantly, you don't have any control over it. You're just like, with your game and with your test, you're like a small ball in a big ocean of supply and demand, and there's nothing you can really do about this. Plus, there are other market effects going on besides of this. So we all remember last year, there was this big shift with Apple's app transparency tracking, right? So everybody was super scared of this. And we can also see this here. Around summer, they rolled out the enforced update. And since then, we also see a big increase here. This is the curve for Android in the US, by the way. And a lot of people shifted their advertising budgets. A lot of companies shifted their advertising budgets to Android and moved away from iOS, especially on Facebook. And this also drove the price up. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the market that is just happening. You don't have any control over, and this drives the CPM price up. And exactly like this, also it drives the CPI up. Okay, so why do publishers keep using CPI, right? Because first of all, like I mentioned, it's easy, right? You just upload it and you click start campaign, and then this campaign just gives you CPI, and you just see like, oh, okay, is this number bigger than that or smaller than that? And then just you continue with this. So it's super easy to read. Everybody understands it, and it's like a common metric, right? Then it's also low risk for the publisher. What does that mean? When you have a game that is guaranteed to have a low CPI, even though the value is fluctuating a lot and it's going up over time, you're still winning out. This is going to be easy game for you to scale, right? Because it's probably working on social networks, maybe even works on TikTok, and it's just like not a lot of trouble for the publisher. And the biggest one, I think, is continuity, because everyone is doing it, always has been like this. This is like the key metric. To every conference that you go, everyone tells you, hey, CPI is the most important metric in hyper casual. So who would be so crazy to challenge that? Except maybe me today, right? So yeah, let's see how this is going. But yeah, I'm super happy to hear your feedback after this talk. What do you think about this? All right, so we have all of these strange effects from CPM happening. How can we get those out of the equation? How can we still look at the marketability of the game without CPM being involved? Well, it's pretty easy, because this formula for CPI is also, that's just another definition, the CPM divided by the IPM, and we kick out the CPM and we're just left with the IPM. So what is the IPM? The IPM is the amount of installs you're getting out of 1,000 ad impressions. So you show your ad to 1,000 people, you get 100 people that install your game. That means you have an IPM of 100, right? So that's like a little bit like the conversion rate of your ad. So 10% of the people that you show your ad to actually install it. And the good thing about this is an inherent metric that's not dependent on the market, because no matter where you show the ad, how the people react to it, it's always going to be very, very comparable. Because in the end, every ad network does the same thing, right? It just plays the video. You can skip it after 5 seconds, or it's a raw video, you cannot skip it. But everything is very comparable, and people don't differentiate, hey, okay, this ad is shown by this network or this network. They just see the video, and their reaction to it is always comparable across all of the ad networks, and also, most importantly, across countries, right? So when people click very well on an ad in the US, you can also see that they're very well clicking on the ad in Brazil or in Mexico or in India and Indonesia, right, in the Philippines. So this is like more like a global metric that's very inherent to the ad, to the video itself, and doesn't change with the market situation. So majority of the traffic for hyper casual games actually does not come from Facebook anymore. I think it used to be like this. Right now, when you scale a hyper casual game, they are mostly scaled through SDK networks. There are some certain cases where games heavily scale through social networks like TikTok, but these are still a little bit on the exceptional side. Not every game scales to TikTok, but there are some that work really well there. But I would say majority of the games, the stable baseline where 90% of the traffic is coming from is SDK networks. So these are companies like Unity Ads, Iron Source, AppLove, and Mintriggle, and so on, right? So, and these work a little bit different than the social networks that I just showed you. So what do you put into the SDK network? You upload your video, that's the same stuff, and then you put a bid CPI. So you tell the network what should be the CPI, right? Remember, Facebook and TikTok, they tell you what the CPI is, and you say, hey, I want to spend exactly this amount of money for every install. Give me as many installs as you can. That's the task that you give the network, right? And then what happens inside? The SDK networks does a calculation. So it takes the CPI bid that you just put in a number, and it measures the IPM of the video. So it just gives some impressions on it and see like, okay, that's a good IPM. It's IPM of 50 to 100, whatever. And then it multiplies those two numbers, and that is then the CPM that the SDK network is using. And then it takes all of the other competitors that are also trying to run campaigns, and then it sees like, okay, this company is paying me a CPM of $60, this one is paying me $50, this one is telling me $40, and it puts them in order, and it gives the majority of the traffic to the companies or to the games that pay the highest CPM. So these are the ones that get the highest volumes then, right? And then same stuff happens like on the social networks. It just shows the impressions to different people, see which one convert very well, and then tries to get you as many installs as it can, right? So the output here is just volume. It's just the amount of installs, right? And that's, I think, this the key critical point that you need to understand. And it always drives me a little bit mad when people say a game has a CPI. There's just a way for Facebook to tell you what it gives you for a CPI, but you decide what the CPI of the game is by putting in the bid. And when you increase the bid by 10% maybe, that means you're getting twice the installs. So you have full control actually of the bid and the volume that you're getting in return for this. But the thing that doesn't change, that's the IPM. That's the inherent value of the ad, of the game that you created, right? And that is what we want to measure here. One example from our own company. We had one game recently called Fall Break. This was, I think the initial idea was conceived beginning of December. Then we tested this game around Christmas time. I think one day before Christmas, we saw on Facebook CPI of 37 cents. So that's on the edge of what most publishers would accept, right? So usually you're trying to go a little bit lower, at least when you read the official numbers, right? But it had an IPM of 150. So really, really amazing. It means 15% of people who saw the ad installed the game actually. And we just, went ahead with it, like, okay, this is really amazing. And actually 2 weeks later, we were on top, #1 of the charts in the US and 10 other countries. So also super fast iteration time there, just 6 weeks from initial idea, initial concept until we're on the top of the charts. So it works. That's what I want to tell you with this. And we see this across all of the games that we are publishing. And this is our main metric that we look at. We still look at CPI. It still has some value. I'll come to this later. But IPM is our key metric in the early marketability phase. So the question is, why should we stop there, right? So IPM tells you about the marketability of the game, but there are other aspects also, right? And most importantly, the revenue and the retention, like what is happening inside of the game after the user installed it actually and watches ad in there and keeps earning money for you, right? So it gets complicated here because there are many different types of hyper-casual games, right? When you look back at like 3 or 4 years ago, the games look more similar, but what we have seen out is a very big differentiation of different games over the last years, right? And they all come with different key metrics. So let's say you have your typical simulation game, right? Something like Fall Break, but also where maybe you paint sneakers, you do hair, you paint nails, you do something with mud or slime or something that's ASMR, right? And this usually is super marketable, right? People are, this is very accessible to people. They like the experience and they click a lot on the ads. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have something like Isle Arcade, right? These are more complex games with more depth that maybe are not so attractive for everyone, but more for a gamer audience, actually, which is a little bit smaller. But what you see actually then also like with this depth, there's like a very different potential for the lifetime value of a user, or like the amount of time that they're playing it, right? Simulation game might be fun for 2 or 3 days, but then you get rid of it. But there are super amazing idle arcade games out there that you can play for weeks and weeks and have a lot of fun with this. And this gives you a very higher potential to show more ads over time, right? Because in the end, that's how you earn money in your hyper casual game, right? Maybe on the first day of the install, and like some days after that, you're starting out with like 3 ad views by the user, but this grows over time, right? So over 2 weeks, you can see then here, for example, in this game, almost 12 ad views, 12 interstitials that this person has seen. And this curve actually keeps growing over time, right? So it like continues like this. For a really good game, this continues over several months, but most games, they flatten out after like 2 weeks to a month. So that's where you can say, okay, the amount of ad views that they have for this game is around, let's maybe say 10, right? So this is a formula that I scribbled down actually about 2 years ago. I was very new to the industry back then. I had no idea how the games work. So I needed to start somewhere and explain to myself, okay, this is actually how you can make a profitable game, right? And I started with the most simple way of truth, right? What is the core principle that we're looking at? A game must have a higher lifetime value than what you're paying for a user, right? So LTV must be larger than CPI. That's the only way how you can earn money with the game, right? So you earn more money than what you're paying. Easy. So let's try to split this up. So what is actually LTV? LTV is the amount of ad views that you're getting multiplied by the price, right? So CPM is the price for 1,000 ads. So we have to divide this by 1,000. And so it's just the amount of ad views multiplied by the price. And CPI, as we have seen from some slides before, is just the CPM divided by the IPM. So the price for ads that you need to show divided by the conversion rate, so to say, right? And the good thing is here, we have CPM on both sides of the equation. Why is that good? We can cancel it out, right? So if you remember basic math, you can just divide by CPM and then it's out. Why can we do it? Because we are doing a simplification here, right? So we assume that CPM on the showing ad side and earning money ad side is the same CPM than when we are buying on the market, right? This is technically not 100% truth, and that's a simplification because I showed you this graph, and with the equilibrium in the middle, it's not exactly that. There are no perfect equilibriums in economics. It's just that every company wants to earn a little bit of money, so that everyone puts a margin on the CPM. So it's not exactly the same. There's maybe like a 20% difference between the two numbers. But for simplicity, we just say, hey, it's very comparable. So maybe here the CPM is $30 and maybe here it's $35, right? So it's still in the very same ballpark. But the good thing is once we have divided this out, then we can just form the little bit around, multiply by 1,000, multiply by the M, and then suddenly we have this formula here, right? So ad views multiplied by IPM must be greater than 1,000, and then your game is profitable, right? That looks a little bit like a scoring system actually, right? So once this number goes up here and is larger than 1,000, that means your LTV is larger than your CPI and you're earning money. So you just need two numbers. How many ads are my users looking at? And what is the IPM that I measured before on my marketability test? And then you know if your game can be profitable or not. Because what you usually have, you have these different games. You have a CPI of 20 cents, and then, and the retention is good, but it could be better. Maybe it's 40%. Is that enough? You don't really know if it's going to run profitable or not, right? So to make it very, very simple, just without all the math that I just showed you, what makes a good game? It's pretty obvious. You can show many ad views in the game. So people keep playing it, and they watch many interstitials, they watch many rewarded videos over time, and it has a higher marketability. So people really, really like clicking on the ad, they like installing the game, and this combined just makes a good game. And the only thing that we need to do is just multiply those two numbers, and we get something that I like to call the Sunday score. Trademark pending, just kidding. You are free to use it, of course, in your own company and your own way of looking at it. But that's a concept that we are trying out for us right now. It seems very, very promising for us to evaluate games, that every time we try to get, after we did the initial IPM test and it looks promising, we try to get ad into the games as quickly as possible without optimizing anything, like without optimizing the monetization itself, just showing any ads. And then we measure those two numbers and multiply them. And then we also develop a scale, what is good, right? So you remember 1,000 was around like, okay, this is going to work out, this is going to be profitable. So everything for us that's between 500 and 1,000, that's interesting. We can work on that. We can still do some improvements. It's not going to fly by itself yet, but it's promising. Everything below 500, we have tried it out. It's quite difficult to get running. It's not a good investment. But everything above 1,000, we are pretty sure this can be profitable. And everything above 1,500, even this is going to be a hit. This can go into the charts, and this is something that really can pay your salary and your rent for a long time and can earn you a lot of profit as a developer, but also as a publisher, of course, right? And just for information, I just showed you Fallbreak, which had this IPM of 150, and it went up into the charts at position number 1. It actually had a Sunday score of 2,500, so it was way out here. And this again proves like, okay, this is something that we can work with. And that's something that we are trying to get more data on, but it seems to be very, very promising for us. So what does it mean? We just killed CPI? No, we did not. One does not simply kill CPI. It's still a very important metric. There are a lot of other companies out there working very successfully with this metric, much more successful than us, of course, that are also much longer in the industry already. And it still contains a lot of information that you can use. For example, the CPI can tell you a lot about the scalability of the game. That means when you still have a low CPI, for example, on TikTok, of course you should go for it and try to scale it on TikTok as heavily as you can. It can also tell you a bit about the target audience that you're looking at, right? So in the end, it's always best to look at all the data that is available to you and take a decision based on that. But in my opinion, it's not enough to just look at CPI. It's not a reason to completely get rid of it, but I think there are better ways and more, more some ways to look at everything together to evaluate a game. This concludes my presentation. I hope you like it. I hope you could follow, and this gives you some new insights how you can look at your games, but also how we will look at your game when we evaluate it together. So we are super happy to work with you. And all our publishing managers are, of course, in the Pine section, and you feel free to contact us there.